Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we're discussing the Dark Angels on Terra. Have they finally gone too far? Spoiler warning to begin, as the events we're discussing today are from the Warhammer 40k novel Cypher, Lord of the Fallen, by author John French. As always, I really recommend you read the stories for yourself first, without spoilers, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. If you wanted to use one word to describe the Dark Angels chapter, committed could be one, dedicated another, but perhaps in truth, obsessed is the most appropriate. Ever since the fall of Caliban, the shattering of their legion and revelation of betrayal, the Angels have quite simply been stuck on that moment in time, mentally forever scarred by its actions. Their obsession with redemption has seen them name themselves the Unforgiven, and most importantly, seen them slide ever further down the dark road of obsession. They have kept secrets, destroyed information, betrayed allies, and even killed innocents, all to hide their shame. And now thanks to the novel Cypher, Lord of the Fallen, we have even seen them dare to infiltrate the Imperial Palace, bringing their shame into the home of the Emperor himself. The Imperial Palace is the heartbeat of the Imperium. Without it, without him, the Imperium simply ceases to exist. It is the most hallowed, revered location in the galaxy, where no excuses or exceptions are allowed, for the Emperor's security overrides everything else. So the question now really does have to be asked: have the Angels finally gone too far? In their relentless pursuit of Cypher, have they crossed the one line there is no turning back from? They believed they hid their tracks. They believed they were hiding their presence. So did they? Or is it simply a matter of time before the eyes of the throne falls on to the returned L. Johnson's sons? Well, today we're going to analyse the actions of the Dark Angels on Terra and discuss if they truly did get away with it or not. Now, the Dark Angels task force arrived to the Sol system in the aftermath of Cadia's fall. In actual fact, after Guilliman himself had arrived with his Terran crusade. The throne world and the palace were being assaulted by Khorne's legions in the battle for Lion's Gate. And so, no pun intended, chaos was dominating the throne world. It does have to be said the Dark Angels didn't arrive to Terra specifically to hunt Cypher. It was a genuine coincidence of timing. However, in listening to communication traffic upon their arrival, they learnt not only had Guilliman somehow returned, but he had Cypher with him, and that he had been taken into custody, with the Dark Angels leader Mordecai somehow knowing of the dark cells beneath the Imperial Palace. Now, I pronounce Mordecai, however it could be an alternate spelling of the word Mordecai, Mordechi. But anyway, as ever with the Angels, the presence of the Fallen overrides everything else, and unbelievably they would set about infiltrating the palace to get their hands on Cypher. And this is where the evidence trail starts, and I'll break it down into the key events. The Dark Angels, attempting to use the carnage of battle as cover, descended with 2 gunships and 2 fighters, taking a total of 16 Marines for their deployment, obviously all Deathwing or Ravenwing members, those privy to the truth of their past. And using the carnage and cover of battle, they managed to navigate the Imperial Palace's void shields, heading for a long-deserted portion of the palace. And it is worth remembering just how vast the palace is here. It is nigh on a continent in size. However, the Dark Angels did fire upon gun emplacements and communication arrays once through. However, the Dark Angels did fire upon gun emplacements and communication arrays to cover their transit as they navigated their journey, making it notable Event 1, as the first key piece of information is one of their fighters did take a hit, losing half of a wing. In knowing their presence couldn't be discovered, the pilot did self-destruct. However, while the main wreckage may have been vaporized, that half of a wing is still out there in the palace somewhere. Maybe a needle in a haystack, but it's there. Maybe the wing had its identifying symbols or characters on it, maybe it doesn't. We do know the armour of the Marines themselves is just a plain dark green, with all their symbols scraped off. But it is evidence of the Dark Angels' actions nonetheless. And for the record, the fighters were referred to as the Jet Black of the Ravenwing as well. Now moving on to notable Event 2, the Dark Angels then blew their way into a dome of an ancient disused sector, where they landed their ships. And this is important to remember. These ships were not destroyed, they simply landed. Notable Event number 3, and the next key event of the Dark Angel Strike Force, was for them to hit a seeming administrative hub of some kind, to learn the route to the Dark Cells. Here the Dark Angels would leave no witnesses, slaughtering all the loyal guards and servants alike, even torching the room after, clearing it of any evidence. However, a distress call did go out. With Terra and the palace in turmoil, it most likely went unnoticed. However, it went out, and I think that's a vital piece of the trail the Dark Angels left. Moving on to Event 4, as the Strike Force continued its journey deeper to the Dark Cells, they attacked a Mechanicus relay temple. Now, they took this out absolutely expertly, suffering no losses and destroying it completely. However, once again, another distress call went out. And on a side note, inadvertently, it was the Dark Angels destroying this hub that enabled Cypher to escape from his cell, causing widespread escapees due to the power outage in fact. Event 5. In traversing a large forbidden zone, the team was then spotted by an arbitrator gunship. Though it was made clear the ship couldn't make out who it was actually attacking, it did force the Dark Angels to destroy it. Yet more devastation and wreckage left in the Dark Angels' wake. And it's after this, with Cypher's escape, that the Dark Angels found themselves in a lot more action. As Event number 6, they ambushed Cypher and the Fallen upon a bridge. And through this contest, several Dark Angels were taken out. Now, Mordecai was careful to inform his men to destroy the bodies of their fellow fallen kin. However, at least one fell off the bridge, plummeting into the depths below. Most likely this chasm plummets to unknown territories. I mean, we're talking about the very depths of the Imperial Palace here. And the body will never be discovered or found. But it is still technically a trace left behind. It was also revealed or confirmed here that Mordecai wanted to take Cypher alive. So we know for absolute certainty the Dark Angel ships were left at the landing site and not destroyed. Later, in not a piece of evidence as such, the Dark Angels would be discovered by a custodian, who, though they would kill, they would lose 6 men trying to do so. However, their bodies would be burned as well. The final and maybe most important event, number 7, is the Dark Angels' final attack on Cypher, where the remaining members of the Dark Angel strike force are all killed. This is another battle on a crossing, so maybe some of the bodies were lost to the depths. However, we know for a fact that Librarian Mordecai died upon the bridge, his blood pooling around the feet of Cypher. And the chances are there's at least a few more bodies scattered around. And this is important, because in the epilogue of the story, we see 2 figures discussing Cypher at this very spot. And they refer to the dead custodian as one of our kind. So it's safe to assume they were custodies themselves. So what evidence do we have of the Dark Angel strike force? It seems an absolute certainty that the custodies at the very least have found the body of Librarian Mordecai, and most likely a couple of others, loyal Dark Angel and Fallen alike. The custodians would also know that the bodies of the Dark Angel strike force were not escapees from the Dark Cells. So, though the bodies had no chapter livery or symbols left on their armour, they were clear outsiders. Which, to me, if you know anything about the nature of the custodies, would have led them to investigate further, having to be absolute in their protection of the Emperor. So what else could they have found in their investigation? Well, we know at least one other body fell into the depths of a chasm, unable to be burned. But I think we have to give the Dark Angels the benefit of the doubt here. It most likely would never have been found even by the custodies. We know the Dark Angels destroyed the Adeptus Mechanicus relay, and though they destroyed any evidence, I think that particular action does cause a problem. Firstly, the custodies would know it was the destruction of that caused the Dark Cells riot and escape. Secondly, they have the fact they received the distress call from it, knowing that the relay wasn't destroyed by some kind of malfunction or machine error. It most certainly was some form of attack. This for me certainly leaves circumstantial evidence it was most likely these intruders who perpetrated this action. That could in turn lead them to investigate the original distress call, seemingly laying a path of infiltration the Dark Angels would have used. If combining this with the destruction of the defense placements and communications arrays during the Dark Angels' insertion flight, I think it's a possibility the Dark Angels' 2 gunships and 1 remaining fighter would have been found. Because let's remember, it was a planned abduction mission. The Dark Angels were going to attempt to fly back out with Cypher. With the strike force having died to a man, those ships are still most likely there, sitting and waiting for them to return. Now the Dark Angels made sure to clear their armour of symbols, and while it isn't stated their ships were also, I think we need to give them the benefit of the doubt here too. Could the chapter's identity be discovered from the ships otherwise? Its internal systems or its identification somehow? I don't know. But again, I'd assume the Dark Angels would have done their due diligence here too. However, it does have to be said, running around in Dark Angel green armour and having your jets in Ravenwing black is a bit of a giveaway, even without chapter symbols. But overall, maybe the Dark Angels could get away with it. Maybe unbelievably, despite daring to infiltrate the Imperial Palace, despite slaughtering those loyal to the throne, even one of the Emperor's own custodies, the Dark Angels still could just get away with it. However, for me, there's one big problem. Their gene seed. For all the Angels' attempts to leave no evidence, for all their burning of the fallen and their comrades in arms, we know at least the librarian's body remained, and absolutely must have been found. We know the custodies would know he was no escapee, and the gene seed of his body, while not saying Dark Angel in big flashing letters, it absolutely would say Unforgiven, an uncorrupted son of Lion L. Johnson. So while the Dark Angels chapter in particular may escape the throne's judgment, I'm not so sure the Unforgiven as a whole won't escape the throne's suspicion. Uncorrupted Astartes found beneath the Imperial Palace of the Unforgiven legacy, and there's a strong possibility their path of destruction and infiltration would be found as well. It may not be enough to bring the force of the throne and Inquisition onto their chapters, but I think it's absolutely enough to provoke investigation. How lucky for the Angels now, of all the times, their Primarch has returned. Probably the greatest get out of jail free card you're ever going to get. With another loyal Primarch returning, surely the Unforgiven now will escape any judgment. It does remain to be seen, however, if the Lion himself will ever learn the full truth of his son's actions. And if he does, if his sons do reveal the full truth of their chapter's history, how will he react? But as always everyone, what do you think? How do you think the Custodies will react to a son of L. Johnson being found beneath the palace? Could we see this furthered in a future storyline? A secret Inquisition investigation into their chapters? Would this event be elevated to Trajan Valoris's attention? Or with L. Johnson returning, have the Dark Angels simply received the one thing that saves them from any judgment? As always everyone, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.